Welcome to the Fish Bear Removal Board Application Workshop. This is the Eligible Project Types module. Here we present the different project types you can apply for through the Fish Barrier Removal Board Grant Program, here on out referred to as the board. The board funds the three project types you see here, which are essentially either design, construction, or a combination of design and construction allowable under certain conditions. First, I will go into more detail on the planning project type. Planning grants fund the design of a barrier correction from initial assessment through final design. Appendix C of the board's Guiding Manual 22 provides guidance on the way designs should be produced using board funds or the minimum design standards to be used when applying for a restoration grant without a design produced using board funds. Appendix C of the manual delineates 3 design stages and their required deliverables. These design stages align with industry standards, avoid the use of confusing percentages, and are meant to provide logical check-in points for DFW technical reviewers to ensure a barrier correction meets state Fish's Passage criteria and board policies. Final design is the required deliverable, and planning projects that do not meet this deliverable will be considered incomplete. While developing designs, permitting agencies may be consulted with and permits applied for during a planning project. However, secured permits are not a requirement of a planning grant. 15% sponsor match is required for funding requests greater than $500,000. However, you may qualify for reduced or zero match with a request greater than $500,000 using the match certification form. Please watch the match and match certification workshop presentation for more information on this topic. Projects that are not requesting more than $500,000 to produce final design and can commit to a grant agreement of no more than 24 months are eligible for a grant that requires no sponsor match. These policies apply to the entire grant request, not individual barrier corrections when proposing more than one barrier correction in a single application. Barrier corrections funded under this grant program must meet state fish passage criteria as defined in Washington's Hydraulic Code Rules 2020-660. The board prioritizes projects that are designed to support natural stream processes and morphology, often referred to as geomorphic approach. DFW's published water crossing design guidelines promote this geomorphic approach and provide practical real-world knowledge and techniques to improve the overall success of water crossings. These guidelines do not replace regulatory requirements, though they are designed in part as technical guidance. The board prioritizes fish barrier corrections in the following preference. Full abandonment and natural geomorphic restoration of a stream is the highest priority. A bridge is the next priority. And third is a stream simulation design culvert. Planning projects may bundle more than one barrier correction into a planning project. Reach out early to DFW if you're considering multiple barriers. In rare and extraordinary circumstances, applicants or sponsors may propose a different solution when the preferred 3 approaches are not viable. Manual 22 refers to these as alternative designs. Alternative designs specifically refer to situations where a roughened channel or similar fishway is proposed to aid fish passage as part of a barrier replacement or crossing abandonment. Applicants proposing an alternative design approach must have a robust alternatives analysis to support its use as the only viable alternative. A sponsor that is approved by the technical review team to implement an alternative design must provide a detailed inspection and maintenance plan as a final project deliverable of a planning project or prior to construction for a restoration project. The inspection and maintenance plan begins after the project is constructed and extends to the 10-year post-project compliance term of your RCO agreement that begins at the close of your grant agreement. Its purpose is to demonstrate how monitoring and potential maintenance will be employed to show and ensure fish passage is viable after the grant agreement has closed. See pages 137 through 138 of the water crossing design guidelines for what should be included in an inspection and maintenance plan. Prior to applying for funding of an alternative design, we recommend you reach out to DFW board technical staff and plan a visit to discuss site constraints. You should also make it clear in your application if you're applying for restoration funds with an alternative design that was produced without board funding. Proposals including tie gates are allowed if full removal is the proposed scope. At this time, tie gate replacement with the newer tie gate is not eligible. Designs are reviewed by your project's assigned technical review team led by DFW Fish Passes biologists and engineers. These reviews are conditional requirement of your RCO grant agreement and require written approval to continue each design stage of the project. The Tier 2 review occurs following your submittal of an alternatives analysis, preliminary design, and final design. On a case-by-case basis, there may be other project deliverables that the TRT requires approval, including, for instance, an inspection and maintenance plan for alternative design projects. RCO grant managers may not reimburse planning costs for a subsequent design stage until the prior stage has been approved by the TRT. DFW encourages prospective applicants to reach out to DFW board staff prior to or during the application grant round for technical support in scoping your project. DFW field staff can complete an updated barrier assessment for your site and may perform quality and habitat assessment to see if your project is a good fit to the program. Restoration projects provide funding for construction of a fish barrier correction. As part of a restoration project, an applicant may request funding in the architecture and engineering portion of the budget for final design, development, and permitting. If the applicant has an active board-funded planning project at the time of application, the applicant must remain on track to finish final designs or risk losing restoration funds. Remaining on track includes technical review team design approval of final design of the proposed restoration project scope within 18 months of the restoration grant start date. If a project does not meet this timeline, the project must be presented to the Fish Barrier Removal Board to acquire approval to proceed. If you are requesting over $500,000 of grant funding for restoration, you must include a preliminary level design and application. Please be sure your preliminary design meets Manual 22 Appendix C standards. Please be aware that there will be technical review team design review conditions as part of your restoration grant agreement for designs submitted with your application and for those to be completed during a grant agreement prior to construction. If you're requesting greater than $750,000 in funds, you must provide 15% match. However, you may qualify for no or reduced match with a match certification form. Review the match and match certification process presentation for more information on this topic. Design build is a project type that allows sponsors to design and construct a barrier correction all in the same grant agreement. This project type targets relatively straightforward and lower cost barrier corrections. These projects are capped at a maximum of $500,000. Similar to a restoration project, costs to produce designs are limited to the available 30% AA&E limit. All of the 3 standard design review stages are required and must be approved by the TRT prior to construction. Ineligible project elements include permanent acquisition, habitat elements outside of the area of disturbance deemed unnecessary for fish passage, and unrequired upgrades to infrastructure. Indirect costs are also not eligible. Please note these restrictions also apply to sponsor match. If it's not eligible for reimbursement, it's not eligible for match. This is not an exhaustive list. If you are unsure, contact your grant manager. Thank you for listening.